Hi everyone, yasas que kalosirtate to another episode of Dimitra's Dishes. Today we're making olive oil tahini sesame cookies. You can call them sesame cookies, tahini cookies. They are made with olive oil, but you can use your favorite vegetable oil. We'll talk about the oil in a little bit. These are so good. They're very light and sweet. They're vegan, so that's great if you're fasting for Lent or if you just want dairy-free, egg-free option. This is it. They last long on the countertop in an airtight container or in a cookie jar. They go so good with coffee or with a big glass of milk. Let's get started. So you don't need any fancy equipment for this, just a couple of bowls and a whisk. Okay, I'm gonna start with the dry ingredients, so that way I only need one whisk for this. So over here I have 3.5 cups or 500 grams of all-purpose flour. I have 2 teaspoons of cinnamon. You can use 1 if you're not a huge fan of cinnamon. A little bit of salt. This is a 1/4 teaspoon of salt and 2 teaspoons of baking powder. I am not going to whisk them together yet because I need orange zest in this. Orange is really nice with sesame. It brightens it up. Sesame tends to be a heavier flavor. It's a more grown-up flavor. I guess think of it like grown-up peanut butter or something like that. If you're not a huge fan of sesame, you can use almond butter. You can use peanut butter if you really want to. It is going to have a heavy peanutty flavor. It is up to you. But if you get the sesame brand that I recommend, it's perfect. It's nutty, it's nice and light. It has just the right amount of sesame taste in it, and it's not bitter or burnt tasting like some can be. So I like to put the zest of 2 oranges. You can do just 1. And go ahead and whisk them all together. Easy peasy. Now for the wet ingredients. So I have 1 cup of granulated sugar, that's 200 grams. To that, I'm gonna add a cup of orange juice, 2 teaspoons of pure vanilla extract. I'm also gonna add the baking soda right now. I always like to add the baking soda to the acid, so that way you don't get that bitter flavor from it or the bitter taste from it. So just 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda. And 1 cup of and 1 cup of light olive oil. When I say light, I mean not the expensive kind that you put in salads that's extra virgin cold pressed. That is gonna make the cookies too heavy. This is one that I get from Costco. I don't know if you guys have a Costco nearby. If you don't have this kind of olive oil, you could use whatever vegetable oil you like and trust that's very lightly flavored. And if you don't mind the taste of coconut, you can use coconut oil instead. I think the refined coconut oils have less of a coconutty flavor. I'll leave it all up to you. And the tahini. This is my favorite brand, Soom Tahini. It's very nice and light and nutty. Perfect amount of sesame flavor, like I said. This is not sponsored, by the way. It's just a brand that I really enjoy. 1/2 cup of it. This is really good. And Whole Foods 365 brand, that one is really good too. They make an organic tahini that's just as good as this one. So mix everything together until the sugar has dissolved. And then you're gonna add the flour ingredients in 2 or 3 batches. And once the batter gets a little bit too thick for the whisk to handle, you could switch to a spatula. And if you want to, you can do all of this in a stand mixer, like a KitchenAid mixer. It's totally fine. And this is a very sticky batter. You're not going to want to use it right away because you won't be able to form this into cookies. You're going to set it aside, cover it with a clean kitchen towel for about 15 or 20 minutes until it sets. Then we're going to form the cookies. Meantime, I'm going to clean up. Okay, so now after 15-20 minutes, the cookies should be ready to be formed. The dough does set a little more, as you can see, as it sits. If you were to go ahead and try to form them as soon as they're made, it's just going to be impossible. So just set it aside. You want to get 2 or 3 trays lined with parchment paper. I made these cookies yesterday and I'm reusing the same parchment paper. As you can see, there's some sesame seeds still on them. You can reuse parchment paper. There's no point in wasting it. You also want to have a plate with sesame seeds in it. These are not toasted, these are just plain sesame seeds. And you're going to take a tablespoon at a time of the dough, or a walnut-sized amount, and then you can roll it first into a little ball. You can just roll all of them out first if you want to, or do one at a time. And then you roll it into about 4 or 5 inch rope like this. And at this point, you could do a few things. You can take the rope as it is. Okay, so here's one thing. If it starts to fall apart on you, you could just rework it. The more you work the dough, the easier it's gonna be for it to roll out. If it tends to be a little too sticky still, which it shouldn't, or if it starts to crumble and break still, then you could add a little bit more flour. But the more flour you add to the dough, the heavier your cookies are gonna be. So you can roll it in the sesame seeds, and then you could put it on the tray and form it. You could form it into a little circle. You could do a little S shape. It's gonna be completely up to you. There's a little circle. Let's do one more in an S shape. Now, it's a good idea to form them directly on the trays. This is how you do an S shape, obviously. Leave some space in between them. If you form the shapes on the cutting board and then transfer them, they're gonna fall apart. These are very delicate cookies. Now that's how you do it with the sesame seeds on top. You can leave out the sesame seeds. You'll naturally have some sesame seeds on your fingers and on the board or your work surface. So you can just have just a few sesame seeds like that and make the cookies, or have them totally immersed like this and have them covered in sesame seeds. I'm gonna leave that up to you. I'm gonna continue making these, and so I don't keep moving the baking pan back and forth, I'm gonna form all of the balls right now, and then do one step at a time so it moves a little quicker, so I could have a little kind of like an assembly line going. My kids are not huge fans of sesame seeds, so I'm gonna do half or a few with sesame seeds and a few just plain like this. Now, if you want to, you can also sprinkle some sesame seeds on top if you just want a light coating of them. These are all options that you have. You can make these however you like. There you have it. One tray is ready for the oven. So I'm going to continue forming the cookies. In the meantime, I'm going to put this tray in there. The oven is preheated to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. They're going to bake for about 20 or 25 minutes. The less you bake them, the softer they're going to be in the center. I like them a little bit on the crispy side. They're still going to be a little bit soft on the inside because of that tahini. I'll show you what they look like as soon as they come out. So the cookies were ready in 25 minutes, but oven temperatures do vary, and especially if you have 3 trays baking in there at the same time, it might take a little bit longer. If you did put more than 2 trays in there, make sure you do rotate them so that way they bake evenly. 25 minutes is usually what it takes, but if you like them a little bit crispier, you can bake them a little bit longer. If you like them a little bit softer, you can take them out at the 20-minute mark. If you like them soft, let them cool on the baking trays once they come out of the oven, and the bottoms will stay slightly soft. If you want them a little bit crispier, as soon as they come out of the oven, transfer them to a cooling rack and then let them cool completely before you transfer them into either cookie jars or airtight containers. These stay fresh for a while at room temperature. You don't have to refrigerate them. Make some coffee and call some friends over. It is time for the taste test. So good. I prefer them with less sesame seeds on top. They do look really pretty with the sesame seeds, but they're a little bit milder. You do get the flavor of and the nuttiness from the tahini that's in them, the warm spices of the cinnamon and the cloves, and then the orange. It just goes so good together. Like I said, make some coffee and make a batch of these. They're just absolutely delicious. Let me know how you're making them in the comment section down below. The exact measurements are on the website, dimitrasdishes.com. If you want to learn how to make more cookies, click over here and I'll see you right over there. Yes, us.